so this is the first edit of The Happy Pumpkin by J. Wilburn. As Halloween approached, the candy vanished from the shelves. Kids took advantage of bags being out. Well-meaning parents bought candy early, but had to buy again before Halloween. Candy sitting around is just too tempting, probably exactly why the stores put it out early. The good people of the town of Butcher Falls were not the only creatures interested in the candy. Let's say this time of year. All right, that's a great line. That's going to be the difference between a Pulitzer Prize or not. All right, a little green vine snaked out from under the edge of a shelf between shoppers at the local drugstore. If anyone had checked the security cameras recording that evening before the footage was dumped, they would have seen that vine grabbing a mini pack of Twizzlers, bags of circus peanuts, and fun-sized candy bars, but no one checked. The Walmart's broad candy aisle was picked over by vines in the wee hours of the morning. Tired stock boys rolled out pallets on jacks and added to the shelves in zombie-like trances. They stuffed extra items behind the things on display like they weren't supposed to do. They also missed the vines slipping away with candy. All right, that's fine. Troy rested his elbow on the grimy convenience store's counter and his pimpled cheeks upon his sweaty hands. The vine pushed through a break in a vent and moved to the middle aisle, where it sensed the rich, sugary aromas. Plastic crinkled as the vine helped itself. A scrape across the floor brought Troy's head up in a startled snap. He looked at both doors first, then in the direction of the bathrooms. Cameras showed all pumps empty. Let's say camera monitors next to him. Camera monitors next to him showed all pumps empty. Then the scraping sound came again. He let out a wavering sigh and stood up a little straighter, but still had to duck to see out from under the plastic cigarette ad above the counter. Checking the rounded windows, he saw nothing. The only sound was the throbbing rhythm of the cooler motors, that were well beyond the point of needing regular scheduled maintenance. That the sound lulled him back onto his elbows, and the scraping noise of candy pulling through a broken vent did not wake him this time. Through a broken vent, a minute later, did not wake him this time. Okay. These unnatural thefts of candy increased as the night of Halloween drew closer. As darkness thickened over Butcher Falls on the 31st, the pumpkin pulled itself out from under the crawl space below the abandoned house at 115 Elder Drive. The place had been empty for years, but somehow the power was still on, at least with the porch lights that shine bright and inviting this evening. No one had been inside in months, not even the agents of the bank that had recently acquired the property from yet another bank that had failed to sell it, again. All right, good deal. Distressed properties were sometimes difficult to unload. Butcher Falls had some nice neighborhoods. Elder Drive was about average middle class with nice families and a safe school, but not a particularly impressive one. Not a particularly impressive one in sports, let's say in academics or sports. Everyone knew the story of the Campbell family vanishing from 115 Elder Drive. The rumors grew over the years, and there were not a lot of house flippers in Butcher Falls, so the banks sort of passed the property around. If anyone did venture inside, it would look and smell old and musty. Though there had been no treatments, the place was rodent and vermin-free, maybe more than the houses occupied by families all around. Say maybe more so than the... Alright, that's better. The happy pumpkin had to eat something between holidays. All right. The pumpkin was careful not to be seen. It always was. As it searched up and down Elder with its empty but glowing triangular eyes, it saw the street was clear for now. It needed to hurry, though. Pumpkin used his vines to set out plastic bowls. Let's say used its vines and leafy fingers. I think I want to use that later, and it'll be good to introduce it now. All right. Used its vines and leafy fingers to set up the plastic bowls with the best candy it had gathered and stored under the house. No circus peanuts or chalky generic candy tonight. Only the best stuff for Halloween. Pumpkin had also discovered that parents and children were wary of loose open candy. Everything had to be in its own wrapper in order to lure them in. It had not always been that way in the past, but Pumpkin had to adapt and evolve in order to survive. Everything that wanted to eat, everything that wanted to live had to eat. Pumpkin sniffed the air with its single triangle nostril. The children were getting closer. More of them were coming outside in their little costumes, like individually wrapped treats, each to their own. He took the moment to straighten a few decorations that had been left in the attic after the Campbell family was devoured. The scarecrows were getting a little ragged. Yeah, I'm going to leave that in. I used the word ragged a little too many times, so we'll see if I need to change that. The scarecrows were getting a little ragged, but they still looked fine along the porch. He used an old lighter to light up a few candles, and then he positioned himself near the candy, but over beside the iron railing. He looked just like a fresh jack-o'-lantern himself if he held very still and no one got too close. Of course, if they got too close, wrong kind of two, homophone mistakes make me feel the dumbest, so I always try to find those. If they got too close, there wouldn't be much left of them to tell anyone else. He opened his mouth in a wide, mad grin. As long as he didn't show too much of his sharp teeth, it worked fine. Even though he had no candle in his hollow core, he still lit up with a flickering light. As the night went on, he would get brighter with his excitement and anticipation. The first parents walked up the stained drive and over the brick steps to the tempting candy. The little kids looked and smelled delicious, but they were with their parents. Pumpkin would eat up the little ones fast, but some of the parents might get away. That would be a problem to his survival, so he had to be patient. The little kids mostly had parents and mostly came out early, so bigger treats. Let's say some. I got a missing word there. So some bigger treats. Oh my goodness, would be out alone later. All right, I just had it worded differently, but that's fine. I'll just leave it like that now. As the little ones tapered off, Pumpkin watched one more baby dressed as a pumpkin herself retreat from the house in her parents' arms. Pumpkin licked his orange lips with a stringy yellow tongue that scratched like drying pulp. His time would come. The first teens made their way up the drive. It was a group of 5. No parents, but 5 was a lot to take down with the street busy. He thought he might be able to do it if he was quick. A couple of the teens held back, though. "I don't like this place," one said. "Yeah, no one lives here. This stuff could be poisoned." A bigger teen with his jean-clad legs so close to Pumpkin's mouth, so very close to Pumpkin's mouth, said, "All of that is just urban legend." I don't mean some creeper," one of the teens out of reach on the lawn said. "I mean some kid from school who hates everyone who could have covered that stuff in bleach. No one lives here, dude. Why is there candy?" That gave everyone pause. Pumpkin desperately wanted those last 2 to climb up on the porch so he could have a shot to bring them all down. Get out here. Get out here, one of the boys on the porch laughed. "Let's split it up." That's not... No, maybe he's yelling at them. "Get out of here." One of the boys on the porch laughed. Let's split it all. Let's split all of it up. No, that's not how he would say it. Let's split it all up. That sounds more natural. All right. Not with those two babies on the lawn. Take whatever you want. I'm out. It was nice knowing you. All right, got a missing word. All right. We would smell bleach. There is no bleach. Could be laxative. Another pause, but then the retort came. Everything's wrapped up. Stop being stupid. One of them picked up the entire bowl to dump into his pillowcase. The teens didn't even bother with costumes. Only take one or two, the pumpkin roared. The bowl dropped back onto the little table. A few pieces of candy dumped onto the brick steps. The teens looked around and then focused on the doors. Someone's here. No one's here. That's a speaker. A speaker that tells you not to steal candy as you're stealing candy. If the guy has something to say, let him come out here. Otherwise, I'm taking it all. The pumpkin decided. All right, let me make this past tense. The pumpkin decided he was going to bite straight through the biggest teen's ankle. Whatever the consequences, this was it. Then a parent called from the driveway. You leaving any for us? Only taking two like the sign says, the big kid called back. There was no sign, actually. Not all the teens took one or two before they left. The parents laughed about it together as their kids took three each. The teens, parents, and kids slipped away alive and well. During the lull, the pumpkin relaxed its cramping mouth and used its vines to put back these spilled pieces of candy into the bowls. If this night went much longer, he'd have to drag out more candy from under the house. One flat piece of candy had a shoe print on it. Pumpkin tossed that piece into the bushes. Maybe it would lure out a mouse or some house cat for later. Pumpkin would be disappointed if that was all he got to eat on Halloween. The night dragged on, but everyone was in groups and Pumpkin decided not to risk it. Eventually, porch lights winked out, up and down. Up and down Elder Drive. Voices rose from over fences and backyards, but traffic for candy dropped off. Pumpkin's mad grin melted into a toothless frown. Then it happened. One lone kid, younger than the teens from earlier, made his way up the dark drive. Pumpkin held very still. If he dared to smile, the kid might notice and run. He was all alone. He was wearing an all-black costume. It was some superhero thing Pumpkin did not recognize. Too young to be out here alone. Too dark to wear that costume without a flashlight. Too late to still be trick-or-treating. Pumpkin didn't care. He held very still and waited as the boy took the brick steps one at a time. This was it. This was finally it. Voices rose again and the boy froze. Pumpkin could wrap the kid up in vines easily. Even if he got twisted up in the railing, he could put the kid out and feast at his leisure. He waited, though. No hurry. If the boy decided to bolt, Pumpkin could just snag an ankle. All right, let me fix a typo there. Could snag an ankle and take him out in the yard without anyone to see. The voices drew louder and closer. Those were not parents partying behind fences. Dark figures approached from the street. He needed to grab up his little treat now or never. Then one of the voices was familiar. The tall teen in his jeans and no costume had traded his pillowcase for a baseball bat. That distraction of recognizing the big boy was all the little kid needed. The little boy sprang into motion. Pumpkin lurched out with his vines, but the boy ran sideways instead of down the walk. By the time Pumpkin adjusted and his vines thrummed through the railing, the boy had broken through the unkempt hedges in the side yard and was gone. The big boy with the bat and two of his friends from earlier approached. The other two carried toilet paper. The two cautious teens who had stayed in the yard and probably saved these three earlier, let's say earlier in the night. No, that's not the right place. Earlier in the night, were not with the group for this trick. All right, save these three in the treat earlier in the treat portion of the night. We're not with the group for this trick portion. For this trick portion of the night. I may need to take out one of the nights, but I like the idea there. Pumpkin rolled his triangle eyes without much effort to hide the motion. One with toilet paper broke the plastic around the pack, missing word, and started unrolling a tail in order to throw the stuff up into the trees. The other kept his pack of bath tissue under his arm as he mounted the steps and dug through the picked over candy bowls. Pumpkin licked his mouth with the pulpy tongue again, but waited for the others to get closer. Only two, the boy with the bat said as he kept his distance this time. They all laughed. I'm going to put that in italics even though it's in quotations, so that kind of makes it sound sarcastic. The boy opened candy and dropped the wrappers back into the bowl as he ate one after the other. Through his gooey full mouth he mumbled, "All the good stuff is gone anyway." "Ain't that always the way?" the big boy said as he swung his bat between two dead bushes and shattered a bedroom window just above his head. The glass exploded like a bomb. The kid eating candy dropped his unopened package, let's say of toilet paper, and choked on the chocolate in his throat. The boy preparing to throw a roll into the tree fumbled it, and Pumpkin smelled the rich stink of urine from his direction. "All right. What are you doing?" the boy who peed himself cried in a harsh whisper. "Why did you think I brought the bat, dummy?" As the pea-smelling boy in the yard pondered that, the kid on the porch held his throat with both hands and dropped to his knees. Change that to a comma, heaving silently. The big boy took the silence as an invitation. Took the silence from both his friends as an invitation and smashed out the next window over. "Someone will hear," the boy who wasn't choking to death said. Vines wrapped around the dying kid and squeezed. "I'll do what I want. No one cares about this house. They'll care if we get caught. We won't get caught if you two can keep your mouths shut." As the vine squeezed, the boy slumping on the porch coughed up a solid piece of candy. He sucked in air with a, let's say, desperate instead of ragged. Desperate, wet gulp. Vines and leafy fingers wrapped around his throat. Let's say his cleared throat. Alright, good enough. "Are you crying about it?" the boy with the bat asked without looking. He was circling to check for windows in the side yard, but those were too high unless he wanted to throw rocks, which wasn't out of the question. I'll say it wasn't out of the question tonight. "Are you okay?" the boy in the yard asked, a second before Pumpkin bit through the gasping kid's skull in a splash of red and gray. The boy in the yard peed himself again and tried to yell in terror, but his throat locked up on him at the worst time. Without wasting time finishing his first treat, Pumpkin launched himself from the top of the steps in the air to the second boy's face. That kid finally got off one small shriek, but the noise cut off quickly. I want to do one more thing up here. Say the hairy leaves around the dying kid's throat started to Okay. Without wasting time, launched himself. The big boy with the bat didn't even hear it as he returned to the front of the house. Are we doing this or what? That was the last thing any of those three boys ever said. He approached his friend on the ground without further comment. His mind wouldn't wrap around what was happening. It was like a poisonous piece of unwrapped candy in his mind. The problem was the missing face. He kept looking for his friend's face before he spoke. He kept no, that was not before he spoke. Let me take that out. That's just confusing. But never saw it because it was no longer there. Vines cut off his breathing. As well. He swung the bat wild as he staggered. The pumpkin seized and snapped both the last boy's wrists. Big boy opened his mouth to scream as the bat fell to the brown grass, but no air could pass through his closed throat. Pumpkin bit through both ankles as he had planned earlier and brought Big Boy to the ground. Now he could take his time eating this great big treat while it was still warm. Let's say take his time unwrapping and eating. By morning, people were looking for the three boys. By evening, they were looking in earnest with the help of the police. Most kids on Elder Drive and throughout Butcher Falls didn't care for those three, let's say, all that much. But everyone has parents, and these boys' parents still love them very much. So, let's just say anyway instead of very much. Love them anyway. No one thought to look at 115 Elder. No reason to think the boys were there. All the candy and decorations were gone. The toilet paper and bat were stuffed. Alright, I need to put an ED on here. Were stuffed deep under the house. Plywood had been boarded over the two broken windows, and no one quite remembered it hadn't always been that way. On November 3rd, a representative from the bank took an officer through the house at 115 without any fuss. There was no indication of wrongdoing there. You think you'll find those kids? We hope they are just out camping or raising hell somewhere and will be home soon. Do you think that's it? Don't know. Thank you for letting me check. You guys ever selling this eyesore? The bank man snorted with no real humor. This place is cursed, at least from a real estate standpoint. Do you want it? The officer shook his head and stepped out. You should fix those windows, otherwise... Put a comma there. Otherwise, more kids will mess with this place. That's bad for all of us. That's not my department, sir, but I'll look into it. He had no intention of looking into it. As the bank man prepared to close the door, he heard a scraping noise. He paused and listened for a couple seconds. Hearing nothing, he locked up 115 Elder Drive for another year. This was someone else's territory and problem. No, let me do it. I'll do some parallel here. Someone else's territory and someone else's